The massive doors of the council chamber slid open with a deep hum that echoed through the circular hall. Ambassador Taemin walked slowly across the polished floor, his black shoes making soft clicks against the smooth surface. Around him, the representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their assigned seats, each one looking down at the human with barely hidden contempt. Taemin took his place at the small desk marked with Earth's symbol. The desk was smaller than the others, pushed slightly back from the main circle. It had been moved there 3 months ago, after the Vorthak complained that humans took up too much space in the important discussions. The Vorthak were massive creatures, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Their leader, Counselor Veltar, dominated the center of the room. His voice boomed when he spoke, and his red eyes always seemed angry about something. Today, those red eyes were focused on Taemin. "The council will come to order," announced the session leader, a thin blue alien called Zephron. His voice was high and sharp, like metal scraping against glass. "Today we discuss the matter of human participation in council affairs." Taemin folded his hands in his lap and listened. He had been Earth's ambassador for 5 years now. In that time, he had watched the other species grow more and more dismissive of humanity. It had started small, comments about human technology being primitive, jokes about their weak physical strength, questions about whether Earth really deserved a seat on the council. "The Vorthak Dominion wishes to address the council," Veltar said, standing up to his full height. His 4 arms spread wide in what passed for a formal gesture among his people. "We have serious concerns about the current structure of this governing body." The other aliens turned their attention to him. The Nexari, who controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes, nodded their large heads. Their representative, Trade Minister Kixhall, had been complaining about humans for months. The Nexari looked like giant insects with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles that made it hard to understand their speech. "Speak your concerns," Zephron said. Veltar pointed one of his thick fingers at Taemin. "The humans claim to be equals in this council, yet what do they contribute? Their military is weak. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their economy is barely worth mentioning." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Taemin remained silent, watching the faces around him. Some looked pleased by Veltar's words. Others seemed uncomfortable but said nothing. "The humans have been given access to our most advanced technologies," Veltar continued, his voice growing louder. "They sit in on our strategic planning sessions. They vote on matters that affect the entire galaxy. But what do they give in return?" Trade Minister Kixhall clicked his mandibles together, which meant he wanted to speak. "The Nexari Trading Consortium agrees with the Vorthak position. Humans control less than 2% of galactic trade. Their worlds produce nothing that cannot be found elsewhere, and usually at better quality." Taemin watched a small insect crawl across his desk. It was a common maintenance bug, one of thousands that kept the station clean. Nobody paid attention to the bugs, but without them, the station would be covered in debris within days. He wondered if anyone else saw the comparison. "Perhaps," said another voice, "we should consider reducing human representation in council matters." This came from Dr. Hicksvell, the chief medical officer of the station. The Altaran was known for being practical about everything. She had pale, green skin and large black eyes that rarely showed emotion. "What do you propose?" asked Zephron. "Limited access," Hicksvell said simply. "Humans can observe council sessions, but their voting rights should be restricted to matters directly affecting their own worlds. They should not have access to classified military information or advanced research data." More murmurs of agreement. Taemin noticed that not one species spoke in humanity's defense. Even the ones who had worked closely with human engineers and doctors remained silent. Counselor Pelrix of the Hegemony raised one of his tentacles. The hegemony controlled the outer rim territories and was always looking to expand further. I support this proposal. The humans have been given advantages they have not earned. It is time to correct this imbalance. Veltar's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. The Vorthak formally propose a restructuring of human participation in council affairs, reduced voting rights, limited access to classified information, and removal from all military planning committees. Seconded, clicked Kixhal immediately. All in favor? Zephyrin asked. Taemin counted the hands, tentacles, and appendages that rose around the chamber. 11 out of 12 species voted in favor. Only the Kepler delegation abstained, and they did so silently, without explanation. The motion passes, Zephyrin announced. Human participation in council affairs will be limited according to the terms discussed. Ambassador Taemin, do you have any response to this decision? All eyes turned to the human. Taemin stood slowly, smoothing down his simple gray suit. He looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each alien representative. Some looked smug. Others seemed to expect an angry outburst or desperate pleading. The human government thanks the council for clarifying our position, Taemin said in a calm, steady voice. We understand that our contributions have been deemed insufficient for full participation in galactic affairs. Veltar's red eyes narrowed. He had clearly expected more resistance. Taemin continued, Earth accepts the Council's decision. We will comply with all new restrictions immediately. That's it? Veltar demanded. No protests? No appeals? What would be the point? Taemin asked, tilting his head slightly. The Council has spoken. 12 species have evaluated humanity's worth and found it lacking. We respect that judgment. An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Several aliens exchanged glances. They had prepared for arguments, demands, maybe even threats. The calm acceptance seemed to unsettle them more than anger would have. Trade Minister Kixhal clicked his mandibles nervously. You seem to be taking this rather well. Should we not? Taemin asked. The Council is made up of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. If you believe humanity is primitive and unworthy of full membership, then you must be correct. The smile that crossed. Taemin's face was barely visible, lasting only a fraction of a second. But it was there, and it made several of the alien representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. Very well, Zephyrin said, clearly wanting to end the awkward moment. This session is adjourned. New protocols regarding human access will be implemented starting tomorrow. As the other representatives filed out of the chamber, chatting among themselves about their victory, Taemin remained seated. He pulled out a small communication device and typed a brief message. Council vote complete, proceeding to Phase 2. He sent the message to Earth, then stood and walked toward the exit. The maintenance bug was still crawling across his desk, completely ignored by everyone except him. Soon, he thought, they would understand the difference between being invisible and being unimportant. The chamber doors closed behind him with the same deep hum as before. None of the alien representatives noticed that Ambassador Taemin was smiling as he walked away. 3 months had passed since the council vote, and Station Commander Zixnall barely noticed when the human medical staff stopped showing up for their shifts. Dr. Sujin had been running the trauma center on Level 7 for 2 years, but her absence only registered when a Vorthak soldier came in with severe burns, and nobody could figure out how to operate the bioregeneration chamber. "Where's the human doctor?" demanded Captain Morkex, his gray skin still smoking from plasma fire. "She transferred back to Earth," said Nurse Kilara, one of the Alterans who had worked under Sujin. "All the human medical staff left last week." "So operate the machine yourself," Morkex growled through his pain. Kilara stared at the complex control panel. She had watched Sujin use it hundreds of times, but had never paid attention to the specific settings. The human doctor had always handled the calibration herself, muttering about biological compatibility matrices and cellular resonance frequencies that seemed too complicated for such a simple healing device. "I don't know how," Kilara admitted. "Dr. Sujin never taught us the full procedure." 3 levels down, engineer Jay-Ho was packing the last of his tools into a gray metal case. The quantum fusion reactor had been running smoothly for 18 months, ever since he had made some adjustments to the power coupling system. The Nexari engineers who were taking over his duties stood nearby, watching him work. "The reactor seems stable enough," said Chief Engineer Voxtall, his insect-like eyes scanning the readouts. "Just basic fusion technology. We can handle this easily." Jay-Ho nodded and closed his tool case. "The primary systems are all automated now. The computer will handle most maintenance cycles." "What about these secondary controls?" asked Junior Engineer Rick Small, pointing to a panel covered with buttons and switches that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. "Backup systems," Jay-Ho said simply. "Probably won't need them." He didn't mention that the backup systems were actually integration protocols he had developed to prevent cascade failures when the station's 12 different alien technologies tried to work together. The systems had been running so smoothly that the aliens had forgotten their equipment came from different worlds and operated on completely different principles. As Jay-Ho walked toward the transport bay, he passed Commander Hyun Woo in the corridor. The military officer was carrying a sealed datapad and heading toward the communications center. "Finished with the transfer?" Jay-Ho asked quietly. "Almost," Hyun-Woo replied. "Just uploading the last of our tactical data to Earth Command. All human military assets will be gone within the week." The 2 men had been friends for years, working together to keep the station's various systems functioning. Neither of them looked sad about leaving. If anything, they seemed relieved. In the docking bay, Captain Min Seo supervised the loading of the last human cargo ship. Dozens of containers moved slowly up the loading ramp, each one carefully labeled and sealed. The Nexari dock workers didn't bother to check what was inside. Most of it looked like personal belongings and basic supplies. "What's in all those boxes?" asked Dock Supervisor Kolnix, more curious than suspicious. "Research materials," Mincio said. "Medical samples, engineering prototypes, cultural artifacts. Nothing the Council would be interested in." Kolnix nodded and returned to his own duties. The humans had always been pack rats, collecting and studying everything. Good riddance to their clutter. What Kolnix didn't realize was that the containers held detailed technical manuals, manufacturing specifications, and maintenance protocols for hundreds of hybrid technologies that the humans had quietly developed during their 5 years on the station. Each piece of alien equipment that the humans had repaired or upgraded actually contained human modifications that made it compatible with other systems. The food processors in the cafeteria could handle nutrients from 12 different worlds, because human biochemists had modified the molecular filters. The communication array could translate between hundreds of alien languages, because human linguists had developed universal syntax algorithms. The environmental controls kept everyone comfortable, because human engineers had found ways to balance 12 different atmospheric requirements simultaneously. But to the aliens, these were just normal station functions. They assumed their own people had built everything correctly from the beginning. Dr. Sujin finished packing her personal laboratory on level 12. 5 years of medical research filled dozens of storage containers. She had been working on something she called adaptive immunity protocols, treatments that could evolve with changing diseases instead of fighting specific pathogens. The other alien doctors had shown little interest in her work, preferring their own specialized approaches to medicine. "Leaving us already?" Dr. Hicksville appeared in the doorway, her large black eyes unreadable as always. "The Council made it clear that human contributions are not needed," Sujin said, sealing another container. "I'm simply following their guidance. Your research projects will be transferred to our medical staff, of course." Sujin smiled. Actually, my research was conducted under human authority. Earth has decided that all human-developed technologies will remain with human scientists. Hixavel's eyes narrowed. But we need those medical databases. There are treatments in there that could save lives. I'm sure the Council's advanced civilizations can develop their own treatments, Sujin said politely. After all, human medicine is primitive compared to yours. She left Hixavel standing in the empty laboratory, staring at the blank computer screens that had once contained 5 years of cutting-edge research. Across the station, similar scenes played out in dozens of departments. Human technicians finished their final maintenance cycles, leaving behind equipment that looked perfectly functional. Human translators completed their last diplomatic protocols, confident that the aliens could handle their own communication needs. Human researchers packed up years of collaborative projects, taking with them insights that nobody else had thought to record. The withdrawals were so smooth and professional that most aliens barely noticed them happening. The humans had always been quiet workers, handling background tasks that seemed simple enough. Surely their absence wouldn't make much difference. In his private quarters, Ambassador Tae-min received daily reports from the departing human staff. Each message was brief and professional, confirming the completion of another phase in humanity's withdrawal from Council space. Engineer Jae-ho reported that all power systems were now running on automatic cycles. Commander Hyun-woo confirmed that human military advisors had finished transferring their duties to alien officers. Captain Min Seo noted that the last transport ships were loaded and ready for departure. Tae-min composed a final message to Earth Command. Phase 2 complete. All personnel and assets withdrawn according to schedule. Station systems appear stable. Proceeding to Phase 3. He sent the message, then looked out his window at the vast expanse of space. Dozens of alien ships moved through the traffic. Patterns around the station, following flight paths that human navigators had optimized years ago. The ships themselves were powered by fusion reactors that human engineers had modified, carrying cargo in containers that human designers had standardized, following trade routes that human economists had mapped. But none of the aliens flying those ships knew any of that. To them, everything was just working the way it always had. Tae-min packed his own belongings into a small suitcase. Tomorrow, he would board the final human transport and leave the station forever. The aliens would have exactly what they wanted, a galaxy free of primitive human interference. He wondered how long it would take them to figure out what they had really lost. The first sign of trouble came 6 months after the humans had left. Medical Chief Hixavel stood in her laboratory, staring at test results that made no sense. The bioscanner showed unknown particles in blood samples from 3 different Nexari. Trade worlds, but the computer couldn't identify what they were. "Run the analysis again," she told her assistant, Nurse Kilara. "I've run it 6 times. Kilara replied, her pale green skin looking even paler than usual. The scanner keeps giving the same result. Unknown pathogen, classification impossible. Hixavel frowned at the machine. It was a top-of-the-line medical scanner, capable of identifying thousands of different diseases and toxins. She had used it successfully for years, but now it seemed almost stupid, missing obvious details that any decent scanner should catch. "What about the medical databases?" she asked. "Cross-reference the symptoms with known illnesses." Kilara's large black eyes looked worried. "That's the problem. The database seems incomplete. There are gaps in the research files, especially in the sections dealing with adaptive treatments and cross-species infections." "Gaps?" Hixavel pulled up the medical database on her own screen. The files were there, but they felt thin somehow. Important details seemed to be missing from reports she remembered being much more comprehensive. The human research files, she realized suddenly. When Dr. Sujin left, she took her research with her. "But I thought we had copied everything." "We copied what we had access to," Kilara said. "But apparently, the humans kept their most important data on separate systems." 3 levels below, in the engineering section, Chief Engineer Voxtal was having his own problems. The quantum fusion reactor that had been running perfectly for months was starting to show warning signs. Small fluctuations in power output, minor temperature variations, tiny inconsistencies that shouldn't matter but somehow seem to be getting worse. "The backup systems keep activating," reported Junior Engineer Rixmole, pointing to a control panel covered with blinking lights. "But I can't figure out what they're supposed to do." Voxtal examined the panel with his compound eyes. The human, Engineer J-Ho, had called these backup systems, but the documentation was confusing. The manual said they were integration protocols for multi-species compatibility, whatever that meant. "Just disable them," Voxtal decided. The reactor worked fine before the humans installed all this extra equipment. Rixmole pressed several buttons, and the blinking lights went out. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then alarms started ringing throughout the engineering section. "Power fluctuation in Section 7, came a voice over the intercom. "Environmental controls failing in the Vorthak quarters. Gravity generators unstable in the Alteran residential area," reported another technician. Voxtal stared at the readings, in confusion. How could shutting down unnecessary backup systems cause problems in completely different parts of the station? "Turn them back on," he ordered. The alarms stopped, and the systems stabilized. But Voxtal was left with an uncomfortable feeling that he didn't understand his own equipment as well as he thought he did. In the administrative offices, Counselor Zephyron was reviewing reports that made him increasingly nervous. Food shipments to the outer colonies were running behind schedule. Several trade routes that had been profitable for years were suddenly losing money, and there seemed to be communication problems between different species ships and stations. "What happened to the efficiency ratings?" he asked his aide, a nervous Kepler diplomat named Nell Cox. "They've been declining steadily since the humans left," Nell Cox admitted. "Cargo handling is down 15%. Translation errors are up 23%, and several colonies are reporting food shortages." "Food shortages? How is that possible? We have more agricultural worlds now than we did last year." Nell Cox pulled up a complex chart on his data pad. "The problem seems to be in the distribution systems. The shipping routes are less efficient, and there are compatibility issues between different species cargo containers." Zephyron studied the numbers. Everything had seemed so simple when the humans were handling these background tasks. Ships went where they were supposed to go, cargo got delivered on time, and different species equipment worked together without problems. "Contact the Nexari Trading Consortium," he decided. "They can optimize the shipping routes." But when Trade Minister Kix Hull received the request, he had problems of his own. The Nexari trade computers were having trouble calculating efficient routes between systems with different atmospheric requirements, gravitational conditions, and species-specific needs. "The route planning software is malfunctioning," his chief analyst, Jixanal, reported. "It keeps trying to send Alteran atmospheric processors to worlds that can't use them, and Vorthak military supplies to peaceful research colonies." "What's wrong with it?" Kixhal clicked his mandibles in frustration. "I think the problem is in the compatibility databases," Jixnal said carefully. "The software doesn't seem to understand which species can use which types of equipment. It's like someone removed all the cross-reference files." Meanwhile, on the Vorthak military flagship, General Morthak was discovering his own set of problems. 17 different weapon systems were showing maintenance alerts, all at the same time. "What's the status of the quantum destabilizers?" he asked his weapons officer, Captain Zekmore. "Functioning at 60% efficiency and dropping," Zekmore replied. "The targeting computers can't seem to lock onto multiple target types simultaneously." "And the plasma cannons?" "Similar problems. They work fine against single-species targets, but they malfunction when trying to engage mixed fleets." Morthak's red eyes narrowed dangerously. "These are hybrid weapon systems, aren't they? The humans modified them to work against multiple alien technologies." "Yes, sir, but we thought we understood the modifications." Apparently not. Back on the station, the medical crisis was getting worse. The unknown pathogen had spread to 7 worlds, and Dr. Hicksville still couldn't identify it. Worse, the disease seemed to be mutating faster than their computers could analyze it. "It's like the pathogen is learning," Kilara said, exhaustion clear in her voice. "Every time we develop a treatment, the disease changes to resist it." "That's impossible," Hicksville said. "Diseases don't learn. They evolve, but slowly, over generations." "But what if someone designed a treatment system that could evolve with the disease?" Kilara asked quietly. "What if the humans had developed adaptive medical protocols that could keep up with changing pathogens?" Hicksville stared at her assistant. The idea was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. If the humans had created medical systems that could evolve and adapt, then losing those systems would leave everyone else permanently one step behind any new diseases. "Find out what happened to Dr. Sujin's research," she ordered. "All of it. I don't care what it takes." But it was too late. The research was gone, along with the scientists who understood it. And with each passing day, the cracks in the council's civilization grew wider. Station Commander Zixanol called an emergency meeting of all department heads. The conference room was filled with worried aliens from a dozen different species, all reporting similar problems in their areas of responsibility. "The situation is becoming serious," Zixanol announced. "We have medical crises we can't solve, technical problems we don't understand, and system failures we can't prevent." "What happened?" The room fell silent. Finally, Engineer Voxtall spoke. "Up, I think," he said carefully. "We may have made a mistake about the humans." "What kind of mistake?" Zixanol asked. "We thought they were primitive because their technology wasn't as advanced as ours, but maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe their real skill was making our advanced technologies work together." The room stayed quiet as that idea sank in. All around, the station hummed with the sound of thousands of different systems working in harmony. But for the first time, that harmony sounded fragile, like it might fall apart at any moment. 1 year after the humans had left, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The grand chamber that had once echoed with confident voices now buzzed with worried whispers and nervous energy. Councillor Zephyron stood at the center podium, his thin blue face looking older than it had 12 months ago. "The council will come to order," he announced, his voice lacking its usual authority. "We face unprecedented challenges across all council territories." Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 alien species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The empty chair where Ambassador Taemin had once sat seemed to loom larger than it ever had when occupied. Councillor Veltar of the Vorthak was the first to speak. His massive frame, once radiating confidence and strength, now showed signs of strain. "The Vorthak Dominion reports critical system failures across 47 military installations. Our hybrid weapon systems are operating at less than 50% efficiency." Trade Minister Kixhowell's mandibles clicked nervously as he accessed his data reports. "The Nexari Trading Consortium has lost control of 12 major shipping routes. Cargo delivery delays have increased by 60%. Several outer rim worlds are experiencing severe shortages of basic supplies." Medical Chief Hicksville stood slowly, her large black eyes reflecting exhaustion. "The medical crisis continues to spread. The pathogen has now reached 15 worlds, and our treatment protocols are completely ineffective. The disease adapts faster than our computers can analyze it." Councillor Pelrix of the Hegemony raised one of his tentacles. "Food production on our agricultural worlds has dropped 30%. The crop optimization systems are failing, and we cannot determine why." The reports continued around the chamber. Communication breakdowns between species, power grid failures on major stations, environmental control systems that could no longer maintain proper atmospheres for multiple alien types. Navigation computers that sent ships to the wrong destinations. How did this happen? Zephyron asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Chief Engineer Voxtal cleared his throat, a sound like grinding metal. After extensive investigation, we have reached an uncomfortable conclusion. The humans were not primitive. They were integrators. Explain, demanded Veltar. Voxtal activated a holographic display showing the station's systems. For 5 years, we assumed that our different technologies naturally worked together. Vorthak power systems feeding Nexari communications arrays, Alteran environmental controls supporting Kepler research equipment, hegemony sensors integrated. With our defense networks, the hologram shifted, showing thousands of connection points between different systems. What we didn't realize is that none of these technologies were originally compatible. Vorthak engineering principles are completely different from Nexari design philosophy. Alteran environmental systems operate on different physical laws than hegemony biotechnology. Then how did they work together? Asked Dr. Hicksavel. The humans made them work together, Voxtal said simply. Every time they repaired or upgraded our equipment, they were actually installing compatibility protocols. They created translation software that let our computers talk to each other. They developed buffer systems that prevented our different technologies from interfering with each other. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You're saying, Zephyron said slowly, that our entire technological infrastructure was held together by human modifications? Not just held together, Voxtal replied. Optimized. The humans didn't just make our systems compatible. They made them better, more efficient, more reliable, more adaptable. Trade Minister Keekshal's compound eyes focused on the engineer. The shipping route calculations? Human logistics software designed to balance the needs of 12 different species simultaneously. The medical treatment protocols? Asked Dr. Hicksavel. Human adaptive algorithms that could evolve with changing diseases. The weapon targeting systems? Growled General Morthak from his position near the back of the chamber. Human integration software that allowed our weapons to engage multiple alien technologies effectively. One by one, the alien representatives began to understand the scope of what they had lost. The humans hadn't been passengers in their civilization. They had been the engineers keeping it running. Counselor Pelrix's tentacles writhed with agitation. How extensive were these modifications? Engineer Voxtal consulted his datapad. Our analysis suggests that human-developed protocols were integrated into 93% of all interspecies systems. Power grids, communications networks, transportation systems, medical facilities, agricultural programs, military installations, research laboratories, and administrative databases. 93%? Zephyron's voice cracked slightly. The humans were very thorough, Voxtal said, and very quiet about it. They never claimed credit for their improvements. They just fixed problems and moved on to the next task. Dr. Nix Ara, of the Kepler delegation, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. On Kepler Station, we've been trying to replicate Dr. Su Jin's adaptive immunity research. We've discovered that her medical algorithms weren't just treating diseases. They were predicting evolutionary paths and preparing treatments for mutations. That hadn't happened yet. Predicting evolution? Hicksville asked. The humans had developed medical systems that could think several steps ahead of any pathogen. They weren't just treating current diseases. They were preventing future ones. General Morthak stepped forward, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. The military implications are even worse. Our intelligence networks are failing because human translation protocols allowed us to intercept and understand communications between dozens of different alien species. Without those protocols, we're essentially deaf to enemy communications. And our own communications? Asked Veltar. Compromised. The humans developed encryption systems that protected our military channels from interception by other species. With those systems gone, our enemies can probably hear everything we say. The weight of their situation settled over the council chamber like a heavy blanket. They had not simply lost a junior member of their alliance. They had driven away the species that had been quietly holding their entire civilization together. There's more, Voxtal said reluctantly. Our analysis suggests that human integration protocols were designed with multiple redundancies and fail-safes. The systems are degrading slowly, but the degradation is accelerating. Within 2 years, we estimate that 70% of our interspecies infrastructure will be completely non-functional. 2 years? Zephron's voice was barely a whisper. Unless we can somehow replicate human integration technology? Yes. And can we replicate it? Voxtal was quiet for a long moment. The humans spent 5 years developing these systems, working with technologies from 12 different species simultaneously. They had access to all of our databases, all of our research, all of our engineering principles, and they understood biological and cultural differences that affected how our technologies interacted. That's not an answer, Veltar growled. The answer is no, Voxtal said firmly. We cannot replicate what the humans built. We lack their perspective, their integration skills, and their comprehensive understanding of interspecies compatibility. What took them 5 years to develop would take us decades to understand, assuming we could understand it at all. The chamber fell completely silent. Outside the windows, alien ships continued to move through space, following flight paths that human navigators had mapped, using technologies that human engineers had integrated, carrying cargo that human logistics programs had organized. But that harmony was an illusion, held together by systems that were slowly failing. And without the humans to maintain them, the greatest civilization in galactic history was quietly falling apart. Counselor Zephyron looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. For the first time in council history, no one seemed to know what to say. They had gotten exactly what they wanted. A galaxy free of primitive human interference, and it was destroying them. The communication request sat in Admiral Bora's message queue for 3 days before she decided to answer it. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the New Soul, looking out at the fleet of sleek ships that surrounded her vessel. 67. Human ships moved in perfect formation through space, their hulls gleaming with technologies that would have seemed impossible just 2 years ago. Admiral, her communications officer, Lieutenant J. Hyuk, called from his station. The Council is requesting a response to their diplomatic message. Bora nodded slowly. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar interior of the council chamber. But something was different. The alien representatives looked tired, desperate even. Counselor Zephyron sat at the center of the group, his thin blue face, showing stress lines that hadn't been there before. Admiral Bora, Zephyron said, his voice carefully controlled. Thank you for accepting our communication request, Counselor. Bora replied neutrally. What can humanity do for the Council? The question seemed to catch Zephyron off guard. Several of the alien representatives exchanged glances. They had clearly expected hostility, or at least cold formality. The Council has been experiencing some difficulty since your people departed, Zephyron said carefully. Technical problems that we were hoping your people might be able to help us resolve. Bora's expression didn't change. What kind of technical problems? Counselor Veltar leaned forward, his massive frame filling much of the screen. Our systems are failing. The integration protocols that your people developed are breaking down, and we cannot repair them. I see, Bora said. And what would the Council like humanity to do about this? Return, Veltar said bluntly. Come back and fix what you built. A small smile appeared at the corner of Bora's mouth. Return to what exactly? The Council made it very clear that humanity was primitive and unworthy of full membership. Has that assessment changed? Trade Minister Kix Hal's mandibles clicked nervously. Perhaps we were hasty in our evaluation of human capabilities. Perhaps Bo-Ra's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath the words. The Council voted unanimously to reduce human participation in galactic affairs. You restricted our access to information, removed our voting rights, and made it clear that our contributions were unwanted. We acknowledge that mistakes were made, Zephyron said, desperation creeping into his voice. But surely we can discuss terms for humanity's return to the Council. Bo-Ra was quiet for a long moment, looking at each alien face on the screen. I'm afraid that's not possible. Why not? Demanded Veltar. What do you want? Better representation? Full voting rights? Access to our most advanced technologies? You misunderstand the situation, Bo-Ra said. Humanity is no longer interested in rejoining the Council. The aliens on the screen looked shocked. Dr. Hixavel leaned forward, her large black eyes wide with disbelief. But you must realize how badly we need your integration technologies. Without them, our civilization is collapsing. Your civilization, Bo-Ra repeated, not ours. Lieutenant Jae-Hyuk stepped into view of the camera. If I may, Admiral? Bo-Ra nodded and he turned to face the screen. Counselors, in the 18 months since we left Council space, humanity has formed alliances with 43 independent worlds, species that the Council ignored or dismissed as worthless. Impossible, said Counselor Pelrix. Those worlds have nothing to offer. No advanced technology, no military power, no economic value. You're right, Jae-Hyuk said. They didn't have those things when we found them, but they had something more valuable, the willingness to learn and adapt. The screen shifted to show a tactical display of human space. Dozens of star systems were connected by bright lines, showing trade routes, communication networks, and defensive alliances. The Kepler refugees you expelled for being too weak now have the most efficient solar power systems in this sector of the galaxy, Jae-Hyuk continued. The wanderer nomads you called primitive now produce the finest navigation computers we've ever seen. The botanical collective you dismissed as useless farmers now feed half of our alliance. Bo-Ra stepped back into view. What my officer is explaining is that humanity has learned something important. The Council's definition of advanced was wrong. You valued individual technological superiority over collaborative improvement. But we can collaborate now, Zephyron said desperately. We understand the value of integration. Do you? Bo-Ra asked. 3 weeks ago, your fleet attacked 2 of our allied worlds. Counselor Pelrix's hegemony forces tried to claim territory that you consider empty space. Territory that happens to be inhabited by species you never bothered to contact. Pelrix's tentacles writhed with agitation. Those systems have no strategic value, no advanced civilizations. And that, Bo-Ra said, is why humanity will never rejoin your council. Engineer Voxtal appeared on the screen, pushing forward desperately. Admiral, please. Our people are dying. Medical systems are failing. Power grids are collapsing. We need your help. Bo-Ra's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. Engineer Voxtal, I remember you. You were always professional in your interactions with our people. Then you'll help us? I'll give you the same advice we gave the Council 18 months ago. Learn to adapt, develop your own solutions, work together instead of competing. But we don't have time, Voxtal said. Our projections show complete system failure within months. Then you'd better work quickly. The communication screen flickered as President Haewon's image appeared alongside Admiral Bo-Ra. The older woman looked directly at the Council representatives with calm, steady eyes. Members of the Galactic Council, she said formally. Let me be completely clear about humanity's position. When you voted to reduce our participation in Council affairs, you told us that our contributions were worthless and our presence was unwanted. We accepted that judgment. We were wrong, Zephyron said quickly. We admit it. We were completely wrong. Yes, you were, Haywan agreed. But not in the way you think. You weren't wrong about our technological capabilities. Human technology was indeed primitive compared to yours. You were wrong about what mattered. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display showed images of human colonies working alongside dozens of different alien species. While you perfected individual technologies, we learned to bring different species together. While you built powerful weapons, we built lasting alliances. While you sought dominance, we sought cooperation. And now you're abandoning us, Veltar growled. We're not abandoning you, Haywan said. We're simply no longer interested in being part of your empire. You wanted us gone, and now you have what you wanted. But what about our people? Dr. Hixavel asked. Innocent civilians who are suffering because of our leader's mistakes? Bo-Ra and Haywan exchanged glances. Any individual who wishes to leave Council space and join our alliance is welcome, Haywan said. We have evacuation ships standing by. You're stealing our people, Pelrix accused. We're offering them a choice, Bo-Ra corrected. The same choice you gave us. Stay and accept diminished status, or leave and find something better. The council representatives fell silent, finally understanding their situation. They had driven away not just humanity, but the principles that humanity represented. Cooperation over competition, integration over isolation, growth over stagnation. This is our final message to the council, President Haywan said. Humanity wishes you no ill will. We hope you can solve your current difficulties and build a better future for your people. But that future will not include us. We have found new friends, Admiral Bo-Ra added. Species who value collaboration over dominance, learning over pride, and growth over control. We are building something new, and we are happy with our choice. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside the station, alien ships continued their patrol routes, following navigation, patterns that were slowly becoming less efficient. Power systems hummed with increasing instability. Communication networks carried messages with growing translation errors. The greatest empire in galactic history was quietly falling apart, and there was no one left to fix it. The humans had given the council exactly what they thought they wanted. A galaxy free of primitive human interference. And now the council would spend the next century learning to live with the consequences of getting their wish.